Stargate. So put that name down in your books, because I think you're going to hear a lot about it.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast. Rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. Who is able to make war with him?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Midnight Ride. I am excited to be back in the Now You See TV studios once again for the Midnight Ride. Tonight, AI Stargate. What does this program have to do with the ancient past, with the future, and with the right now? And let me give you a little bit of advice. If anyone tries to hook you up to the Stargate, you just give him the old stink eye, and you keep moving. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to keep moving because we are now
live. What's up, guys? It's good to be here in the Puritan Barn once again to do a live broadcast for you guys. Thank you for being here. I know you could be anywhere. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if this is the kind of content that you're interested in. We look into ancient, historical, mystery, and biblical stuff, and we kind of just come together with some mysteries and knowledge based off that stuff. And this is stuff that me and David have basically dedicated our lives to researching. And so we're thankful for you guys to be here. Let us know how you guys are doing and where you're from in the chat. David, how's your week been?
It's been really good. It's been really busy. Things are popping over at Ground Zero, but it's great. We're just seeing the work of the Lord go forward, and that's all that matters.
That's right. And guys, for those of you that would like to support what we do, there's some links in the description where you can check it out, support some of the stuff we're doing. We are not monetized on YouTube or any other way, so we do our part by bringing the information, and you guys help it keep going. So we thank you guys so much for it. And if you can't help in any way, hit a share, hit the like button, do what you can do in that way. David, tell us about what you guys got going on over at the Underground Church YouTube channel.
Tomorrow night, FOJC Radio, Sunday Night Live, Brian Reese and I. The insectoids are here. Yes, they are. So don't miss it. It's going to be very crispy tomorrow night on the FOJC Radio Underground Church channel.
Very good, David. Well, that's all I have for right now. I've got a lot of material to cover here, and I think that I'm going to be giving some stuff that a lot of people, you probably have never heard from anybody else. I think that I've listened to just about everything on this subject. I've read as much as I can on it, and I think that I've been able to, I feel like God's shown me some real interesting stuff that was a mystery to me before, but is no longer that now, and hopefully it'll be the same for you guys. And my goal is not to share my opinion as much as just give information. So I'm excited, David, and I'm ready whenever you are.
Let's ride.
All right, let's do it. So tonight we're going to be covering the Stargate. A lot of you guys have heard about Stargate, and if you haven't, then I'm very surprised because this has been the head of all news lately. It's Stargate AI. It's a Stargate LLC, and these people who are doing this are really dedicated to it. $500 million is being pumped into it by our government. We're going to be covering the subject all the way from the Army Stargate operation that happened in the 70s to the predictive programming and shows surrounding Stargate. And to me, the most interesting aspects of all of this stuff is going to be the historical data surrounding it, because to me, it proves exactly why they're doing it, exactly what it is, and it shows us some prophetic significance that we need to understand going into the final and great deception. So we're going to be talking about the Sumerian language meaning of the AI, and we're going to be talking about the biblical and the prophetic meaning of it, and also how it connects to Nimrod, Babylon, and Osiris, because man, oh man, hold your horses, grab your popcorn, guys, because I'm telling you right now, this is mind-blowing. It blew my mind, and I'm not trying to brag at all because it's just research. I'm just researching means you're researching other people's data that have come up with things over the years. So I'm just really amazed at what I believe God has put out there for us to be able to find out. So starting with the project, starting with the most recent events that have taken place, we have Project Stargate that involves several CEOs of major companies involved in a company named Oracle. Here are some of the tensions that people are getting. Just the regular people that aren't awakened yet probably haven't seen all of the other stuff that's going into this, but this is the stuff that the regular people are worried about. So you can only imagine how much deeper this thing goes. So here, we're going to check this out real quick here.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the most exciting things we're working on, using the tools that Sam and Masa are providing, is a cancer vaccine. It's very interesting. It turns out, I'll be quick, all of our cancers, cancer tumors, little fragments of those tumors float around in your blood. So you can do early cancer detection. If you can do using AI, you can do early cancer detection with a blood test. And using AI to look at the blood test, you can find the cancers that are actually seriously threatening the person. Then beyond that, once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer. And you can make that vaccine, that mRNA vaccine, you can make that robotically, again using AI, in about 48 hours. So imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future. The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. And it's unimpeachable. The cars have cameras on them. I think we have a squad car here someplace. But those kind of applications using AI, if we can use AI, and we're using AI to monitor the video. So if that altercation that occurred in Memphis, the chief of police would be immediately notified. It's not people that are looking at those cameras.
So there you go. This is some of the things that people are concerned about, rightfully so. There's a lot that I could say about that. But as many of you know, we're not controlled opposition, so we're not allowed to speak on certain things. But I think a lot of you guys can put two and two together at the kind of stuff that we're getting ready to face here. I think that that's about all that needs to be said about that. And as we continue, you guys will see why. So here is kind of a summary. This is the Wikipedia version of what Stargate is. And I thought it was really interesting here because they said that they've got the name from the 1994 film Stargate. And I thought that was interesting. I had to go watch the film because I had watched it before, but it had been a very long time. I actually even went and watched part of the SG-1 series. I couldn't really quite stomach it all because it was just so like old school, and it was just to me not very interesting at first, but I did read about all the lore surrounding it. And I thought it was interesting that they mentioned this Stargate, and also here at the top, you see that they differentiated the project that was done in the 70s with Project Stargate. And for those of you that know why this is interesting, you'll remember a broadcast that we did called Trump, Time Travel, and Tesla. And in this project, we talked about how Trump was connected to Tesla. He's connected to some books that were written in the late 1800s, early 1900s by Ingersoll Lockwood, how that he actually predicted the world trade, a thing going on in 9/11, how it's interesting that he was the 45th president, which 5 + 4 = 9. He's also the 47th president, which 4 + 7 = 11. So we have this 9/11 number going on with all that. There's a lot of stuff packed in with him, and time travel keeps popping up over and over again. And in fact, many people believe he was actually John Titor. And for those of you who are, I guess, older than 30 years old, may remember John Titor on Coast to Coast. Just amazing stuff. And he predicted many things that were happening on that. So there's a lot going on with that. And so that's what makes it interesting. So to start off, I would like to delve into looking at the project Operation Stargate that took place and started taking place in the 70s and ended near the 90s. And so it was established in 77 at Fort Meade. There were basically a group of people that were coming together and astral projecting, or remote viewing is what they would call it, and they would have targets where they would go to these locations and they would get all the information, all the data that was available at that spot. They would look for missing people. They would do all sorts of things. And this was went by several different names. I've got them listed here on the slide. Gondola Wish, Stargate. Gondola Wish was the first one, and I actually listened to a guy, McMonigal, speaking on Sean Ryan's show today about Gondola Wish, because he was involved at the very beginning of all this, and it just kept going until it was eventually given and rechristened Stargate Project. I really dug into the Stargate Project and read books on it. I have this book that I'm going to be quoting a little bit from called The Sorcerer's Apprentice. I listened to hours and hours of testimony from this, looked at different cases to where they had actually been correct on that. And I believe personally that they were onto something there. And I don't know what. I can't explain it. I believe in out-of-body experiences. I believe that people do these things. I believe that people astral project. I know that it's a major practice in the occult, and now we know that it's also a major practice in the military as well. David, I know that in your times as ministering to people across the world, you've experienced people who have had these out-of-body experiences or astral projected and made a practice of doing it. What can we glean from the practice of astral projection, or what can we learn from it?
Well, this is something that is a biblically forbidden practice. It's a very dangerous practice. Literally, the individual is separating their soul and their spirit from their body. This is actually used by people in the occult and witchcraft as a weapon, where they literally astral project into people's houses, and they're literally the ones that are really good at it can even move physical objects when they astral project. It is reality. It is something that certain individuals that are very adept in the occult and are directly hooked in with the demonic, they can do some frightening things with it. And the military has been involved in this, not only our military, but also the Russian military, and I'm sure the Chinese too, with developing this. And in our country, Michael Aquino was one of the ones that was involved in this psychic warfare realm of the Pentagon. So it's a very real thing. It's a dangerous thing. It's something that New Age practices get a lot of people that are seeking deeper truth or spiritual experiences. They're led into these things, but it's something to be avoided at all costs. The Bible says he wants to sanctify us wholly, body, soul, and spirit. 1 Thessalonians 5:23.
That's right. And I'm going to read out of page 70 from this book here called The Sorcerer's Apprentice, and it's a skeptic's journey into the CIA's Project Stargate. And a very, very interesting book written by John Herlosky. And this is not a book I would normally read, but I wanted to get and see if there's a common thread through most of these people, and see if what they're doing is actually can be corroborated with other people. So I did find that to be the case, that with many people who do this, they have the same exact stories. So that kind of helps in this. Another thing, they call it the place that they go, the Matrix. And I want to read this to you guys. It says, I sat in a quiet twilight of the Matrix in the center of a small circle of soft blue light. Sanctuary is the launch point and return venue for extended remote viewers. It is one of several techniques classified as delivery mechanisms. These mechanisms are designed to launch the viewer into the Matrix and drop them into the target area. And so basically they start out with this blue light, and then it starts to turn into a violet color. I did some research on blue and violet light and the effects on the brain. In fact, the interesting thing about it is blue and violet light are the only ones that trigger the brain differently together. So I don't know if there's a connection with this blue and violet light, but we do know that blue light tech is a huge part of all computers, all devices, and in every LED light now we have blue light. We no longer have the fluorescent or the incandescent lights that we used to have that had the warm light. It's all blue light. Even if you get a warm blue light, it's all blue light. And there's been people who have uncovered blue light tech and what that actually means. I think that there's a interview that everybody should see. I sent it to you, David. I can't remember the guy's name now, Dr. something, but he was on with well, I'll just have to say that maybe I'll remember it later on the show. But if you don't know about blue light tech, I suggest you look it up, because that's one of those subjects that I'm not allowed to talk about. So anyways, here, we're going to page 71. It says there was no feeling, and this is, I'm going to read this page, this book, this part of this book, because I think this ties in to everything so crazily here, because this was a big point of, I guess, attention that Project Stargate had when they were remote viewing, and this attention went to Mars. And it says there was a feeling of being crushed, as when I was viewing the Titanic. There was no oxygen. It was uncomfortable. I looked at the sky to take my feeling off being smothered. And he continues to talk about the red. There's a bunch of red and this blackness and this tornado-looking thing, this whirlwind-looking thing that was next to him. And he was viewing Mars. And there's a lot about viewing Mars. If you look up Project Stargate and Mars, you'll see that a big portion of their time and efforts were on targeting Mars for some reason or another. And I think that when you start to see what some of our leaders are connected with Mars, you'll start to understand that. And actually, as we continue on with the predictive programming and the historical value, Mars plays a massive role in this. So keep Mars on your list. Just like Trump said, remember, and keep Stargate on your book, write it down in your book and remember it, because we're going to talk a lot about it. Well, Mars is one of those things as well. And here is a article. Trump signs bill directing NASA to send humans to Mars. This is huge for Trump. For those of you who watched Elon Musk's Matrix Endgame that we did a few weeks ago, actually a couple months ago, you will see that Mars is a dedication of Elon. He was written about by Wernher von Braun in his book as being the leader of Mars. It's funny, the other day I saw Elon Musk posted an X about that, about how saying that he didn't even know about it, like it was a new information to him. This is crazy. I don't believe that for a minute personally. No. And, I don't, all I can say is that he has been setting up his life to go to Mars for some reason or another. And as I said, we're going to find out more why. So going on to the Stargate series, this has a lot to do with Mars, actually. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about the lore with the SG-1 Stargate series. There was this entity called Phobos, and he was a Goa'uld, and these Goa'ulds were actually kind of like parasites, but they looked almost like worms that would go inside the person, and then they would control that person as a parasite. And these were what the Goa'ulds is another word for the gods. So what they did was they found this Stargate in ancient Egypt. And in the Stargate, it had several symbols on it, and they matched these symbols up, and they were able to travel to this Stargate, to this other place, this planet P3X, I believe. P3X, it was like P3X 888. And it was 88 or 888. P3X 888. And for those of you that understand the meaning of 8, this is pretty interesting. But they would go through this thing, and they found this race of what they believed to be like serpent-type people, and these people were covered with machines. So they were kind of integrated machine bodies and human bodies, and then they also had this Goa'uld that lived for thousands of years inside of it. And these people had created this race of humans that were you couldn't tell the difference between the human beings on Earth and the human beings that they had made there. And they would infest themselves into the humans, and then they would go and mine, kind of like the Anunnaki story. They would mine on Earth and get things that they needed, send it back in the Stargate, and then they would mine stuff on the other planet, send it back and forth in this Stargate. Well, the Stargate hadn't been opened in a very long time. And they would carve out these large empires, and so the person, this Phobos, his father was the god of Mars, so he took his place as Mars, as the god of war in this, and he would rule his countries like Rome did, because there was a large Roman influence. They believed that they were the ones who seated Rome and made Rome happen with their laws so that Rome could take over the entire world. Rome, as you know, you guys, most of you who have watched this program, you'll see that Rome in these elites is a huge thing in their mind's eye. And in the movie itself, I watched the movie, an entire movie there, and in this movie you have they're going to this other planet, and this other planet is called Abydos, which I thought was super interesting. And the goal of this guy, Jackson, who's going through this, who kind of gets activated to go through this Stargate, is to blow up the portal on the other side over there and possibly take out whatever he can take out over there, because over there's this god Ra. And when you see this god Ra, he's kind of an androgynous god. He looks like a female, speaks like a man. He has this mask, they have these metal bodies that they kind of can take off or hit a button and it peels off of them. They have these special powers that they can deal with. And in this movie, he tries to blow up this other side, but what happens is these alien type beings, these things in Abydos take off, and he transports the bomb into their ship and blows it up. He gets stuck over there. He decides to stay over there on the other side of the portal. And so this is the kind of story, just kind of setting up all of this. So we have a Stargate that takes us back to other civilizations that have to do with these gods. When this god blows up, you could see it as soon as he blows up, you could see what was inside of the human body, and it was a gray alien. It looked dead up like a gray alien in the side of this Stargate. And David, I don't know if you ever got a chance to watch any of those shows or not, but they had there's a lot of symbolism in there, and I think the lore is 100% based off of some of these old stories.
It really is. And like you say, they're a little laborious to watch. They're not the most interesting, but there is a ton of predictive programming and correlation with all of the Genesis 6 scenario, all of the Anunnaki scenario. It is just no doubt about it. They really done the research, and when you see things like that, they put it together in a way to convey a message, and it is predictive programming.
Yeah, for sure. And there's other people doing more stuff on this. I saw some of you guys listen to Enter the Stars. You know who Casey is over there, and he is a master at going through movies and shows and decoding them. I've never seen anybody that's able to do it. So if you want to go check out some of the stuff he did, I definitely suggest it, because some of the stuff that he would say, I may not see that, and I may not think it's much, but you may think it's something as well. So go, if you want to really look at some deep decoding, there's a lot more there. But let's just say that it ties in with everything we're talking about here. So we're going to move on to what I think is the most interesting part of all of this, is the AI in ancient Sumerian terms. And this is not something that I ever looked at before, and I don't know what drove me to do it, but I just thought this AI has to have something significant. There's something significant with AI, and obviously it's right now we know there's something significant, but what about, can we learn about it in ancient terms? So I looked at the A. The A is in ancient Sumerian, this is the A, and it means water, watercourse, canal, seminal fluid, offspring, father, tears, flood. And in the reference that I have here, when you read this reference, it is in reference to the demons trapped and within the Apsu. And then you have the Apsu, which for those of you that don't understand the Apsu, it's equivalent of the abyss. This is the abyss where evil resides, where demons reside, where basically the giant serpent resides. This is the place. David, do you have any more you could add with us about what the abyss is? Now, of course, we know what comes out of the abyss, but what else can we add to the meaning of abyss?
Well, the abyss is used as a prison house for spirits. In Luke, the 8th chapter, we see Jesus sending the devils into the abyss. And we see in Revelation chapter 9, Abaddon, the king of the bottomless pit, or the abyss. It is a portion of the underworld, and this is something that the Sumerian and Babylonian cultures, they were very, very aware of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And then the one thing too that struck my interest, it talks about it being a water course and a canal, and the go ahead.
Well, and this connects with the biblical word, the deep.
Yep.
The
Boy,
deep.
you read
Yeah.
my mind, because that's
Oh,
that's
well,
no,
I'm sorry, I'm
you
getting
got
ahead
it.
of you. Yeah.
No, you got it. You're right. And it says here that within dead things are formed from under the waters and the inhabitants thereof. This is in Job, and there's this idea of this fluid that continually produces in the scriptures, and in other books they talk about this fluid and this I guess flow of energy that comes from the deep. David, discuss the deep just a little bit, since you mentioned it.
Well, in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 2, it says, darkness was upon the face of the deep. And there are scholars that believe, and I would agree with this, that deep is actually an entity. The Bible talks about the deep calling unto deep, and this would be associated with the Tom and with Tiamat in the Babylonian rituals. And the deep, and it talks also of the fountains of the great deep being broke up at Noah's flood. And this is when literally there was a vapor canopy, which I believe were like the rings of Saturn, that collapsed from above, and the subterranean deep was opened up, and literally in Noah's flood, the waters were 20 feet over the highest mountain. Now, that's a bunch of water. Mm-hmm. And this deep, we've read also, we've done read from Babylonian exorcism texts that talk about the androgynous beings that live in the deep. And the Babylonians trace the very beginning of things to androgynous creatures in the deep, which we see in Scripture as a holdover from that judgment in Genesis 1 and 2, when the whole earth was without form and void. So it's a terribly important concept, and it's kind of a basic spiritual understanding to be able to move forward to really get what's going on.
So we've in the Sumerian language equals waters, having to do with maybe the abyss and the spiritual bodies that are in there. Now we're going to move on to I, and it says to go out, emerge, to send forth, to lead, to bring out, to rise, to sprout, or to become visible, to appear as a witness. So we have these waters of the deep, of the abyss, possible meaning rising, coming forth, emerging, and sending forth. And when you think about that in terms of the possibility of the abyss being opened, it starts to make a lot of sense, and we'll continue here, and I think we'll start connecting a little bit more of the dots. So when you go back to Sumerian terms, you have to go back to Babylon as well. We have to go back, because one of the first mentions of a stargate of sorts is Babylon, which Babylon means, according to most etymologists, means the gate of the gods. And for those of you that have never heard this spoken about before, if you look in the book of Jasher, you'll see a little bit more about it that I'll jump to here in a second. But I also want to go over some of the alternate meanings for this possible word here, and because they have a mixture of there's a mixture of words. The Bab-Alon could come from the word babu, which is a Sumerian term which means portal, or like a portal, basically, like a gate. And then the babu is the word for gate, and then Elon, which is another word, Elon or Ilon, is another word for God. So we have Bab, Elon, and then now this is another possible meaning, which all of them are very similar in their meaning, but you have the mix something. So a lot of people believe it's that, because you have the Babylon, the mixing of languages, and then you have the flowing along a course, bottom of a course, saturate, reject, absorption, and then you have Abel, which is liquid, semi-liquid elements along with a collective course. So we have a lot of similar meanings when we're talking about the AI in Sumerian and also the Babylon. And I'm going to read the verse to you guys about Babylon, because I think that there's some things hidden in here that are going to make a lot of sense. It says, "And the whole earth was of one language." And I highlighted these one languages because language has almost everything to do with why he separated the languages. I mean, obviously, the reason he separated languages is because one language was a problem. There's a reason for that. And it says, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, and they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said, go to, let us build a city and a tower, whose top may reach into the heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have one language, and this they began to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined anew. So this one language kept them, the ability for them to be able to do anything that they imagined to do. And in Genesis 11:9, it says, therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did confound the language of the earth. And from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of the earth. So Babu may not mean gate. It may actually have something to do with the mixing and the confounding here, because it does say that the reason that they called it that was to do with the confounding of the language. And so we'll go and look at the Jasher account of what happened at the Tower of Babel. Now, we've said this many, many times before. We do not believe Jasher is considered part of the canon of Scripture. It is mentioned in the Scripture as being written. There's no way for us to know 100% sure if this is the Jasher that is mentioned in Scripture, but as a historical account of different things, it does a great job. Not everything has to be canon or Scripture to do a good job of being historical data for us to read. So we're going to look in the book of Jasher, because I think that this makes a lot of sense as to why it was a problem. And it says in verse 26, and all these people and all the families divided themselves in three parts. The first said, we will ascend into heaven and fight against him. The second said, we will ascend to heaven and place our own gods there and serve them. And the third part said, we will ascend to heaven and smite him with bows and spears. And God knew all their works and their evil thoughts, and he saw and the tower that they were building. So he believed, and he saw their thoughts, and he believed that they were coming up to actually try to kill him and try to take the throne room and put their own gods in those places. And if we look at Nimrod himself, the character behind all of this, the ruling person at the time, it says that in Genesis 10 verse 8, it says he began to be a mighty one on the earth. And that word for mighty one right there is Gibborim. And the first time we actually see this word mentioned in the Scriptures, we see it mentioned in Genesis 6, where it says they became mighty men on the earth, mighty men of renown. These are the Gibborim of renown. So Nimrod is the second mention of this mighty man. Also, the word began. I looked at the Hebrew of the word began here, and this word has the connotations of defilement. It says defile, profane, pollute, desecrate, and it says to dissolve, profane, to break. Conveys the idea of profaning and defiling something sacred. So this here, let me show you guys this. This is the 2490 word chala, and it's 2490 in the Strongs, and you can look this up in any Hebrew lexicon. When it's used as a verb, which is basically how it's used, then it connotates profaning and defiling. Now, Nimrod, according to the Freemasons, is one of the first, if not the first, Grand Master of the Lodge because of his building practices. According to Mackey's Revised English of Freemasonry, if you look at the word in Nimrod on there, that's what you're going to find. That's what they're going to say. And it's interesting because the reason that they do this, I think that a lot of people, when they look at Nimrod, they think, well, he was a master builder, but he was also able to do something that is the heart of these mystery religions. That's to ascend and become something greater and stronger than just a normal human, to be able to become something more. And there's a few people that have suggested that Gilgamesh is a good possible character for Nimrod. I'm not so sure. David just did a research on Gilgamesh and talked a lot about Epic of Gilgamesh, but you have this idea that he's 2/3 God, 1/3 man. So this 2/3 God, this 0.666 plays a lot in there, and this 0.33 for his 1/3 of his man plays a lot into that. There's another character called Ninurta, which I think, David, you've talked about Ninurta before. We've talked about him. I think I talked about him in the last broadcast that I did. But Ninurta has thunderbolts, and he pursued this Anzu bird to get these tablets of destiny, which I'm going to talk a little bit about here in a second. But many scholars would agree that Ninurta was probably the inspiration. Well, I believe the opposite. Nimrod was probably the inspiration for Ninurta. But if you look at some of the ruins of the cities, it just makes a lot of sense because Namrud was the name of one of the cities where they found most of these things to Ninurta. So I want to talk about this story of the Anzu bird, and we've talked about this story before, but there's a lot of things that have passed me up in this when I've looked at it. And one of the things that struck out to me was the idea that he was going for these tablets of destiny. And for those of you that have not read the Anzu and the Tablets of Destiny, I just want to give you guys a kind of a rundown of what this is. This Anzu bird was often depicted as this giant bird with the face of a lion, and sometimes with the face of an eagle. And Enlil gives the Anzu this position of the guardian of his sanctuary. So the Anzu is the guardian of the sanctuary, and he betrays Enlil, and he steals these tablets of destiny. That these tablets of destiny are what grant Enlil authority, and now the Anzu bird has these. And so Ninurta comes to the rescue after several gods try and fail. Ninurta comes and confronts the Anzu bird. And here's an example of what the Tablets of Destiny do. I think that this is really key to understanding why I'm even bringing up the Tablets of Destiny. But as Ninurta goes to shoot arrows at the Anzu bird, the Anzu bird uses the Tablets of Destiny, and it reverts the arrows back to their normal form. These tablets have the power to reset things the way that they were. So they have the power of reset, to turn things back to their original state and change time and basically create this wheel of time that's a never-ending wheel of time where they can just completely reset things and do things all over again. And what happens is he gets these tablets. The tablets are destroyed that tell us exactly what he did with them, but it seems to me that he didn't want to give them back at first, but then they offered him a place in the council of gods so that he would give them back. And because it goes on at the end of this tablet talking about how Enlil's wisdom is supreme, or Enki's wisdom is supreme in the matter, so he ended up getting the tablets back. So they offered him a high place on the council of gods for getting these tablets of destiny back. And David, we've done a broadcast on the Book of Enoch, and we're going through the Book of Enoch, line by line, chapter by chapter, and we've gone past the chapter 69, but there's something in 69 that I want to bring out here that I believe could be talking about these tablets of destiny. And I've never noticed this before. The other day, I was researching this, and this just came to my mind. So this is theoretical, but yet to me it makes a lot of sense and starts to make me understand this a little bit better. So in Enoch chapter 69 and verse 13, it says, "And this is the task of Casbiel, the chief of the oath which he showed to the holy ones when he dwelt high above in glory, and its name is Bakah." So this angel, Casbiel, who's the chief of the oath, showed this oath to the holy ones in glory. It goes on to talk about the reciting of this oath that takes place. And as we read here, I used to think that this was a Satan, because the way I read it, the way it reads, it seemed to read that. But when I read it and I actually broke it down and started going word for word, I realized that at the end of verse 13, verse 14 could be a whole nother paragraph. It starts a whole nother statement that has nothing to do with the Satans on there. And I'm going to read it, and you guys can see if you agree with me or not. So in verse 13, it says, the verse we just read, and then it goes on to in verse 12. Let me start over here again, guys. Sorry, I've got the chart here. I probably could use that. So in verse 4, it says the first is Jachan. This is talking about the Satans. The second was Asbiel. The third was Gadriel. The fourth was Numu, and the fifth was Kazdijah, and then the 13 doesn't say he's the sixth. It doesn't say anything about him being one of them. It says, and this is his task. In fact, he goes on to give the oath to Michael, so that Michael can recite it, so the whole earth rejoices after he recites this oath. And if you continue reading the chapter, that's exactly what happens, showing that he is not, in fact, one of the Satans. He's reciting the oath to kind of reset, get things back to the way they started. And if you read that whole chapter, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But I did some research on his name, and his name, Kasa, the name Kasa that is ingrained into his name means to conceal, and it means the covered hand, the hidden power. And so this is interesting because this angel was in charge of this oath. And so it reminded me of something here, because when we see this idea of this angel being in charge of an oath, it reminds, and being a covering, basically, the one that is supposed to take care of this oath. It says here that he is the covering hand of this oath. You have in Ezekiel 28:14, you have the anointed cherub that covereth. And it says, and I've set thee so, thou was upon the holy mountain of God, thou was walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. So this entity in Ezekiel 28 has been in the holy mountain, walked up and down the stones of fire. We see cherubs mentioned many other times in the scripture. In fact, in the mercy seat, there are 2 cherubs that cover the mercy seat. We have the cherubs that guard the Garden of Eden with the flaming sword. You have the 4 creatures who are in the throne room of God. All of them have very interesting characteristics. Here in the cherub, you have the face of a man, the face of a bull, the face of a lion, and the face of an eagle. Many times when we think of cherubs, people look at these little creatures for Valentine's Day that are cherubs. That is not a cherub. A cherub is a monstrous, huge-looking creature that has different characteristics. One thing you'll see is in the Mesopotamian beliefs, you have the idea of this Anzu bird, this creature that resides at the top of this tree. And you have the cosmic tree. There's many stories of people going to the top of this cosmic tree, receiving wishes or some sort, like Lugobanda, receiving something from this Anzu bird. And now we have the Anzu bird actually that steals the tablets of destiny, and they can't get it back from him. And it also connects, really interesting here, to the Mazzaroth. And David, I'm gonna talk a little bit more, then I'm gonna get you to weigh in on here, but I want to finish this thought. So the Mazzaroth, the interesting thing about the Mazzaroth, the interesting thing about these cherubs is the heads that they have. And this has been connected this is from the book, The Alpha and the Omega, chapter 1 by Jim Cornwell. And the interesting thing about these is that the heads actually match in 4 fixed signs on the Mazzaroth, and they're all exactly 3 signs apart from each other. So, and they're equidistant from each other, and they form a cross on the zodiac wheel that represents the sun path in the night sky. So like a portal path of the sun in the night sky. If we look at Enoch, you remember that there's certain times when the sun passes through these portals. Now, if you look at the different ones, you have all of the different animals. Now, Scorpio is the only astrological sign that actually has 4 animals attached to it. You have the serpent, you have the scorpion, you have the eagle, and you have the phoenix. All of these animals are super relative to everything we have going on here. And another interesting thing that I would like you to weigh on, David, is how you have the cherubs mentioned in Ezekiel 1 with 4 faces, but in the temple, when they actually build these cherubs, they're only given 2 faces. So do you think that there's some kind of relevance to the time periods being a part of the Mazzaroth? Do you think it's a relevance to maybe a couple of these creatures went off base? What do you think? I've never really thought about this before, but I'd like to get your opinion on that.
Well, we can't really know. There's a lot of similarity between the seraphim and the cherubim, yet they're definitely different. And the living creatures we see in the book of Revelation. And I think the best way we could possibly understand it is there's a lot of diversity and complexity in the spiritual realm. You know, I think that the modern church has been guilty of oversimplifying it, you know, and there's a lot of complexity when you begin to study into the spiritual realm and the entities on the good and the bad side. There's a lot there. So I think that might be the best way we might understand it.
Yeah, I don't understand it exactly either. I do know this, that in the scripture where it mentions them building the cherubs, and there's these 4 living creatures, the similarities to them and the beasts in Revelation are hard to ignore. Now, they're not exactly the same, but you have these 4 living creatures and these 4 beasts in Daniel also, which are kind of like the opposite of these creatures in a way. They have different characteristics, but you have these, like you said, there's a lot of different celestial beings. But the idea that this particular being was in charge of these tablets of destiny, also this particular being in the scripture has something that he's done that has altered the order of things. And in fact, you realize that at one time Adam was in control of the world, but then we go on and we see that now the God of this world is something different. There's a different God of this world because he has usurped everything else. And this will start to make a little bit more sense as we go on, but the idea that the Anzu bird could be in fact a type of fallen entity, it shouldn't be too far-fetched. I believe that it's pretty interesting. And so the idea of Nimrod in this will start to make sense as I go on. I want to play a video by Rob Skiba. And Rob, for those of you that don't know Rob was a friend of ours. He passed away in, I believe, 2020 or 2021, I believe it's 2021. But when it came to this subject, he was able to present some information that was just outright amazing. And I wanted to show from one of the presentations that he did, I wanted to show something that he brought forth. I wanted to give credit where credit's due, because I think that in order to understand the rest of what I'm going to say, you guys need to hear this. So let's check this out.
You know, I talked about the return of the Watchers that were judged, bound, and buried for 70 generations. Is it just a coincidence that what happened in the 20th century? The return of the Nephilim, is it just a coincidence that we're seeing the hybridization taking place? Well, what about the return of the beast? We're expecting the return of Christ. I believe that there's going to be a return of Antichrist as well. If you remember the names that I had up there, Osiris being one of the references to Nimrod, one of the names he became known by. Well, the tomb of Osiris was found in 1999. Dr. Zahi Hawass said, I have found a shaft going 29 meters vertically down into the ground, exactly halfway between the Chevron pyramid and the Sphinx. At the bottom, which is filled with water, we have found a burial chamber with 4 pillars. In the middle is a large granite sarcophagus, which I expect to be the grave of Osiris, the god. I've been digging in Egypt's sand for more than 30 years, and up to date, this is the most exciting discovery I have made. This is what they found when they looked at it. This is an artist rendering of it. The red star is the location between the pyramid and the Sphinx. And then you came down into a large chamber, went down again, came down to an area that had 7 sarcophagus things, and another tunnel that went down even further, actually 6, with a 7th one going down. And then you have the artist depiction on the right there of what they found. Now, the sarcophagus was open. They did find a body inside of it. Everybody that looked at it and studied it did not believe that it was Osiris, but they were thinking that this may be what we might consider to be a resurrection chamber. And so what it appears is that somebody, maybe with the hopes of being resurrected, was loaded into this thing and it didn't work. But it's a very interesting find. You can look that up, study that for yourself. And in 2003, April 2003, coincidentally 1 month before we set up the military occupation phase in Iraq, and the first thing our troops did was raid the Museum of Iraq, and 170,000 items were reported stolen. Of those, most of them were returned. The ones that were not returned were about 3,000 items that all dealt with resurrection and the afterlife. Probably just a coincidence. That's right after they found the tomb of Gilgamesh. And if the stories are to be believed, the body was found, believed to be Gilgamesh, incredibly well preserved, and the primary objective was to extract DNA. So then we get to a warning from Yeshua in Matthew 24. He says, if any man say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall shew great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. And he says, behold, I have told you before. That's King James. Other translations make it sound like, hey, listen up, I'm about to tell you something. Remember what I've told you before? Think about it. If they shall say unto you, behold, he is in the desert. The body of Gilgamesh was pulled out of the desert in 2003. Go not forth. Behold, he's in the secret chambers. The secret chamber of Osiris was found in 1999. Believe it not. For as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. That's what we should be looking for. Those are the real signs. Any other signs pointing to a Christ, forget about it. This is what you need to pay attention to. And then he says, for wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. And I think Steve said, rightly so, there are many different ways people have looked at these passages. Lots of different interpretations. Here's one of mine. When you look into what the occult believes, and again, the Freemasons and the Illuminati and all the secret societies and stuff, the rituals are all revolved around a dying and resurrecting character. In many cases directly associated with Osiris. And Manly P. Hall is one of the most prolific writers of Freemasonry, said, whenever you see an eagle with a point on the back of its head, it's not really an eagle. It's a stylized, conventionalized phoenix. The phoenix is the Benu. It's the dying and resurrecting soul bird of Osiris in the mythology. So I'm at the train station in Washington, D.C., and if you go there and you look up, you'll see the whole top of the train station is lined with pagan gods. There's one that I didn't put in here, but on the left side, the quote sounds like, it sounds like a biblical thing. It says, "Behold, I put all things under his feet." But it's a Zeus. That's not what my scriptures say, but you look at the stuff, and that's on the left. When you go to the right, you see this right here. You see two pointy-headed eagles facing in opposite directions, and it says, between them, "Let all the ends thou aimst at be, thy countries, thy gods, and truths be noble, and the nobleness that lies in other men, sleeping but never dead, will rise in majesty to meet thine own." What is that all about? Well, I got two phoenix eagles right there. I was thinking about my time in the military. When I was in the Army, I was covered from head to toe with eagles. Eagles on our buttons, eagles on our patches, eagles on our shoes. Like eagles are everywhere, the American eagle. But, Manly P. Hall says there's another meaning behind that. And so while we were looking at all this stuff, there was something that I wanted to see, and I didn't know where it was. And we're driving down the road, and I looked between two buildings, and I saw two eagles perched atop pillars, one on each pillar, through this aisleway. I said, I don't know what that is, but let's go check it out. So I go down there, and this is what we find. A statue, this is in the National Harbor in Washington, D.C., a statue of a bearded god coming up out of the National Harbor. And the name of the statue is called The Awakening, which is right underneath the statue of two eagles looking down on it. I don't know, but this stuff is out there. And you got people, again, like Manly P. Hall saying, the dying god shall rise again. The secret room in the house of the hidden places shall be rediscovered. The pyramid, again, shall stand as the ideal emblem of solidarity, inspiration, aspiration, resurrection, and regeneration. This is in The Secret Teaching of All Ages, Manly P. Hall, page 44.
So interestingly, here when you see this idea of this pyramid being discovered, these chambers, there's so much going along with a lot of this stuff that it's crazy. Because I remember, I've got a picture of it here, but I don't know if you guys remember the WikiLeaks when they leaked all of the Hillary Clinton emails and different stuff. There was an email from Hillary about, it says, requesting documents pertaining to the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, the location of his body and the location of the buried Nephilim. And I remember when that happened, that was unreal. In the background here, I'm going to be playing a video, and it's just, there's no audio to it, but there's a video of this resurrection chamber, and what is being said is Gilgamesh, and this is a VHS tape. Doesn't look faked unless the body itself is fake, which is obviously possible. But when you look at this body and you see like kind of what it looks like, and you see all the stuff around it, if you see anything that stands out to you, David, please feel free to say something. But the idea that I thought about this, Gilgamesh or Nimrod was able to transcend. He was able to do something that nobody else had done previously, to the point to where God actually went down, confused their languages, and split them apart all over the world. And I don't think it's too far-fetched to believe that he was able to create some kind of way to reach into the abyss or reach into something, and to be able to try to steal something, to create himself to be more than just a god. There's a way that he did it. We don't know how he did it. And of course, all of this stuff is speculation on the idea of the tablets of destiny, and maybe he got a hold of those, which is how he received himself some kind of seat on the council, which the Bible does talk about a man who believes he's going to God. He believes he's going to send to the seat of the gods, and he has the heart of a man, but he believe in his mind he's a god. And so it's very possible that he did stumble upon some tablets, some oath tablets that he was able to get his hands on and received a deal because of it. But I believe he's in the abyss right now. I believe that it's very possible that he's in the abyss. So that's enough of that video. Did anything stand out to you, David, when you saw that video, other than the stuff in the tomb there?
Well, it's very, very impactful. But the idea of the resurrection and resuscitation, the Egyptians held this. This is one of the basic concepts behind mummification, that they believed that these could be brought back to life in some point in time. And the ancient beliefs are being pursued through science. The Ted Williams, for the baseball fan, he's still in the deep freeze. They're looking to bring old Ted back. And the whole concept of transhumanism and uploading consciousness into machines. I mean, this is still, it's an ancient belief, but this is still something that is being hotly pursued by science, falsely so-called.
Agreed. And so when we're looking at all of this stuff combined, when we look at the idea of them trying to get to Mars, the Stargate predictive programming about this god of Mars who is in control of the other side of this portal, when you look at the idea of the ascension of Nimrod's trying his best to ascend to become something more than man, when you look at the idea of Babylon being possibly a Stargate to where they were trying to reach the heavens so that they could overthrow God or reach the abyss, when you see the constant programming surrounding all of the psychic phenomenon, the paranormal, supernatural, all of the things that are going on in this world, to me, it only makes sense that what they may not intend to do, but what this Project Stargate intends to do is to enter into a portal of some sort. I don't think it's any coincidence that Oracle is the company who is actually going to house this. I don't know if you remember this, David, but I'm sure some of you guys will remember that a couple years ago, doing a show about 666, Oracle was the company that I mentioned that said this is the only company that actually has the server space to be able to do some of this stuff. This was 2 years ago. And then we did another video about Oracle where they were the first company to make biometric data the company-wide standard biometric, so biometric scanning of all their companies. So they've been in the news for a long time. Larry Ellison has been a major player in the software computer companies for a long time, major CEO, some would say the top in the world, a multi-billionaire. You have all of, I guess, the OpenAI joining together. You have so many different people joining together to create this. And we know, ultimately, we understand what needs to happen in order for all this to take place. But what I believe that is possible, especially when you see the idea of AI possibly having ties to the Sumerian language and the abyss, this verse right here just really hits a little bit differently when you read it. And it says, Revelation 17:8, it says, the beast thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, which Abydos, Abaddon, abyss, all have roots in that word, which Abaddon is the name in the Hebrew, Apollyon the name of the Greek of the beast that comes out of here. It says he was and is not, and then it says here that is one of the 7 kings. He says 5 are fallen, 1 is, the other is not yet come, and when he cometh he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th and is the 7th, and goeth into perdition. So it's very possible that Nimrod is in fact this beast who comes back again, this king. There's not a whole lot of different people that it could be. There's not too many that had a deadly head wound. I think Nimrod was one that, according to the book of Jasher, he had his head lopped off by Esau. Esau stole his garments, and then Jacob was able to receive the garments with soup from Esau. But there's this story doing to that, so there's a possibility there. But if that's a possibility, and if they are trying to open this portal to get Nimrod back out of this portal, imagine those who would wonder after this beast whose deadly wound was healed. And in Matthew 24:24, it says, there shall arise false Christs, false prophets, and shall show many signs and wonders And insomuch, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. I believe that this deception is going to be very hard for people to resist. Even those people that may think maybe I shouldn't do this, maybe this is wrong. I think it's going to be hard to resist. I think that if this portal doesn't open the abyss, it's a portal into the human body. In Daniel, it talks about the final kingdom, and the final kingdom having 10 toes mixed with miry clay, iron mixed with miry clay, and it says that their seed will try to mix with the seed of man, but it won't cleave. And we see through all of this predicted programming, there's a seed that wants to mix with man. They want to use man's body. They want to blend in with mankind. They want to be a part of this, and they want to destroy mankind ultimately, because that's ultimately what's going to happen. I believe that this project is one of many that will take place. There's DeepSeek going on in China, a lot of really high-tech stuff going on. I believe we're going to see some supernatural things that we've never seen, we've been told to believe don't exist. And when people see these things, they're going to have their mind absolutely blown by it. A lot of people are worried about the Noahide laws. And I would say this, I would be more worried personally about the lawless one, because that is the one who is going to bring. He may look like he's bringing in the Noahide laws, but I believe ultimately, as it says in 2 Thessalonians 2:7-12, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for the mystery of iniquity. That word mystery has to do with the mysteries, like looking into the mysteries of iniquity, of lawlessness. Anomia is the word in Greek. It means without law. And it says it doth already work. Only who hath now letteth until he be taken out of the way. And then shall the wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. I highlighted this lying wonders because this implies that the wonders aren't real. They're fake. It's a fake magic, like a fake, almost a holograph that's coming. And it says, and with all deceivableness and unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this God shall send them a strong delusion. God sends the strong delusion, and they'll believe the lie. And it says that they might be damned who believe not the truth, but have pleasure in unrighteousness. And this is why over the years I've been so out against the idea of the modern Christian realm, because lawlessness is the teaching. God did away with the law. You'll even hear that the law is a doctrine of demons, which is a very dangerous thing to say. You'll hear this from American pastors. They'll also mix the profane holy days with God's holy days. They'll actually, the holy days that you think you're celebrating are actually profane days that they've mixed together. So this deception is going to be hard. You're going to see from the Antichrist, from the beast, you're going to see miracles. You're going to see lying wonders. You're going to see resurrection. That's very close to what you saw with Jesus, am I right? But the difference is going to be lawlessness. And the church has been practicing lawlessness. They don't believe that you have to, you should even care about the law. In fact, it's even wrong to even do one of the laws, because if you do one of them, you do all of them, right? We've all heard that in the church. They've already been practicing the beast holidays, and they don't know any better. So when the beast actually comes, for those people who have already been set in the traditions and set in the rituals of the beast, it's going to be hard for them to know if it's actually the beast or the Messiah. And I think that it's important that we try to discern that and be very discerning and start looking at things and paying attention to what's going on. So, this whole project right here, guys, all I can say is this. I'm not going to give my opinion on what you should do. I think you need to get there, and you need to look at all, see what the God would have you do, see what the scriptures say, and look at what the law of God says. Does the law of God allow for this? And if your answer is yes, do it. If your answer is no, don't do it. And I think that, at least for me, I'd say the answer is unequivocally no. So, David, with that being said, that's about all I got. I'd like for you to add whatever you can to this.
Oh boy, there's so much here to think about. And the very word wicked, it means in the Greek anomia, without law, literally without the law of Moses, without the Torah, very clearly outlined in Scripture. And when, there's so many people out there. They got so many solutions for people in the modern church. But if you miss this, you're not even on the playing field. There's two churches. There's two women in Scripture. There's the bride and the whore. This is the whore right here. And the whore, the tares are being bundled together. And there's a scripture in 1 Corinthians 10, verse 13. There hath no temptation taken you, but such is as common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that you're able, but will, with the temptation, also make a way of escape that ye may be able to bear it. And I believe when people begin to partake and open themselves up to things like this and other things we've discussed, that you're going to open yourself up to things that are in the realm of lying wonders that will overwhelm you. You will not be able to deal with it. If you're obedient to God and you don't cross the lines, you'll be fine. But I think people are weighing out into an area. I think these things are a direct interface with the fallen ones. It's a direct connection beyond anything we've ever seen before. And this direct interface is going to literally be overwhelming. It's like, it's going to be like sticking your spoon into a electric light socket. It's going to be overwhelming. So that's the advice here. Obey God, love the Lord and serve Him, and don't be a part of these things that are going to take you places that the Lord never intended. Truly, like the law says, the secret things belong unto the Lord our God. And you're looking at things we're discussing here that were never meant to be entered into, and these are the very things that brought judgment at the Tower of Babel and down throughout time.
With that being said, it's time to pound the like button. We do it all together on the count of 3, guys. Pound the like button. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. You know you'll enjoyed the show, and you know you want to see another one because they get better and better every week. So here we go. On the count of 3, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Boom!
Thank you guys so much for that, and we appreciate you guys so much. I mean, we would not do this if it wasn't for you. We hope and pray that we'll be here for years to come, but we don't know. All we know is that time is drawing near. And one day, if we don't see each other in person, we're going to see each other again someday, and we're thankful for that. And we love you guys and hope you're doing well. David, end us out.
Well, once again, it's just amazing the things that the Lord is revealing. It's just getting daily. There's more things coming forth. We're just really going down the side of the mountain at a very, very rapid pace. And just great job, John. Tremendous presentation. It's just so much for us to think about and pray about. And I guess about the only thing left to say is thank all of you for supporting the Midnight Ride and enabling us to do that. So with that, until next Saturday night, 10 p.m. Central, a big high five and good night, everybody, from the Midnight Ride.
Stargate. So put that name down in your books because I think you're going to hear a lot about it.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up, rise up, rise up.